I was a man built from steel and routine until one message in the rain tore it all apart. My wife ran off with her ex, took my money, my home, and the life I thought was mine. But betrayal has a strange way of forging something harder than heartbreak. What began as loss became obsession, then precision, revenge polished until it gleamed. And when the storm finally cleared, I wasn't the man she left. I was the man who learned what survives after everything burns. Rain fell like a confession that night, steady, cold, relentless. The kind that soaked through your jacket and into your bones no matter how fast you walked. Detroit in late October was a graveyard of steel and smoke, and I just finished my shift at the mill, hands still aching from the heat of the furnace, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost ignored it. My gloves were wet, and I was thinking only about a hot shower and a beer. But something in that vibration, sharp, insistent, made me pull it out. The screen glowed through the drizzle. Rachel. My wife's name. My reason for coming home every night. The message was short, written with the kind of calm that only cruelty can make sound elegant. Don't come home. I'm leaving with Lucas. It's over. I took what I needed. At first, I thought it was a joke. Some cruel misunderstanding. Maybe a fight brewing I hadn't seen coming. But the words stayed there, bright against the rain-streaked screen, until they blurred and bled together. Lucas. Her ex. The one she once called mistake. I stood under the flickering streetlight, every drop of rain hitting my skin like a nail. The world shrank to the weight of that single name. My chest felt hollow, like something vital had been scooped out and replaced with air too thin to breathe. Around me, the mill lights dimmed, the last shift leaving, laughter echoing across puddles. Life kept going, but mine had just stopped. I didn't even notice I was still standing there until my phone buzzed again, this time a notification from my bank. A withdrawal alert. Then another. And another. Rachel was efficient. By the time I got to the truck, my hands were shaking too badly to start it. I sat there, engine off, watching the rain crawl down the windshield, and tried to remember the last time she'd looked at me, without resentment hiding behind her smile. Maybe it was that weekend at the cabin 2 years ago, when she'd worn my flannel shirt and nothing else, laughing as she cooked breakfast in the morning light. Her skin had smelled like wood smoke and coffee. I remember thinking I'd never want another woman again. But love turns to rust quietly. You don't notice until it stains everything. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. Tried again. Same result. The rain picked up, drumming against the roof of the truck like impatient fingers. I finally started the engine and drove, without direction, through the slick streets, past shuttered shops and gas stations glowing under lonely lamps. Every mile was another memory unspooling. Her laugh when she teased me for working too much. The way she used to slide her hand under my shirt when she wanted to remind me she was still there. The nights she said she couldn't sleep and I'd hold her until dawn, wondering what ghosts haunted her mind. Now I knew at least one of them had a name, Lucas. I pulled into a gas station on 8 Mile and sat there, engine running. My reflection in the side mirror looked like someone else, tired, soaked, eyes hollow. I used to think heartbreak was something dramatic, like shouting in the rain or breaking bottles. Turns out it's quieter than that. It's the silence between two messages, the one that destroys you and the one you know will never come. I scrolled back to her text, reading it again like it might suddenly make sense if I stared long enough. Don't come home. I'm leaving with Lucas. My throat tightened. Home. That word used to mean laughter, warmth, her humming in the kitchen. Now it was just an empty house with my name still on the lease and nothing left inside. I thought about driving there anyway. Maybe she'd still be packing. Maybe I could make her see reason, tell her we could fix it. But what would I say? Please don't go with the man you said meant nothing? Please don't erase the last 6 years like they were some mistake. A flash of thunder tore through the sky. The sound was like a warning. I shut my eyes and leaned back, rain hammering the windshield. For the first time in years, I felt something raw and unfamiliar, rage clean and burning. Not the kind you yell about, but the kind that simmers quietly, shaping itself into something colder. She'd taken what she needed, but she'd also taken what was mine. I don't remember how long I sat there. When I finally drove home, dawn was bleeding into the sky, gray and dull. The house looked smaller than I remembered, the windows dark, the door half open. Inside, the air smelled like perfume and absence. Drawers left ajar. Closet half empty. She'd been thorough. I found her wedding ring on the kitchen counter. Beside note. Don't hate me, Danny. I had to do what's right for me. There was no apology, no goodbye. Just her handwriting, soft and steady, as if she'd written it after a good night's sleep. I stood there drenched, my boots leaving muddy prints on the tile. And then, finally, something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a wall giving way after too many storms. I sank into the chair by the counter and stared at that note until the letters blurred again. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. It never did that morning. It just kept falling, slow, endless, cleansing nothing. That's when I knew. The man I'd been before that text didn't exist anymore. Whoever I was now, he was something else, something built from the ruins she left behind. And if she thought she could take everything and disappear with Lucas, she was about to find out what was left of Daniel Reed when you stripped away his life. Morning came without light. The sky over Detroit looked like wet concrete, and the air had that sharp metallic scent that always lingered near the mills. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rachel's message, those 9 words, flashing behind my eyelids like a brand. I showered, shaved, and dressed for work out of habit more than purpose. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that feels staged like a crime scene. Her perfume still hung in the bedroom, faint and mocking. I didn't touch the bed, didn't even open the curtains. I just stood there, looking at the hollow space where her suitcase used to sit. When I finally stepped outside, the rain had stopped, but everything still glistened, gutters, pavement, my truck. I drove to the bank because I needed something solid, something logical, something that still obeyed rules. But when the teller checked my account, her polite expression faltered. I'm sorry, Mr. Reed, but your joint account shows multiple withdrawals over the past 48 hours. How much? I asked, though I already knew it was bad from the way her eyes softened. Everything, she said quietly. The balance is 0. My throat felt raw. That's not possible. I didn't authorize. She turned the monitor toward me. There it was, Rachel Reed. Wire transfers. Online logins. All recent. She'd emptied the savings too. Sir, if you'd like to file a dispute, we can. But my voice broke through hers. What about the house? She hesitated. There's been a title transfer. Looks like it was sold last week. Sold. My name's still on the mortgage, and somehow she'd sold it. I stared at the screen, at the neat columns of numbers, until they stopped making sense. I felt like I was reading my own obituary. By the time I left, the wind had picked up. I didn't drive home. There was no home. I ended up in a diner off Gresham Avenue, the kind that smells like burnt coffee and fried hope. I sat at the counter, staring into a mug that went cold before I even tasted it. I must have looked like hell because the waitress asked twice if I was okay. I lied both times. That's when the bell above the door jingled, and a familiar voice cut through the static of my thoughts. Jesus, Danny, you look like you crawled out of a storm drain. I turned. Marcus Hayes, ex-cop, old friend, and one of the few people I trusted. He looked the same, tall, broad, eyes that had seen too much and learned to look away just in time. He slid into the booth across from me, setting down his coat and a stack of papers. Heard you've had a rough week. News travels fast, especially when your wife files for divorce 3 weeks ago. My head snapped up. What? He nodded grimly. Yeah, found it in the county records. She filed on grounds of emotional abuse and neglect. My stomach twisted. That's bullshit. I know. Marcus leaned forward. But she backed it up with fake text logs, therapist notes, and even a statement from Lucas. She set the stage before she ran. I laughed, a short, broken sound. So I'm the monster now. She's building a story, Danny. Probably to cover her tracks for the money and the house. I rubbed my hands over my face, feeling the weight of grease, sweat, and something darker, shame. She took everything, Marcus. Then we make sure she gives it back, he said. No hesitation. Just calm certainty. Like justice was a muscle he could flex at will. I looked at him, unsure whether to thank him or punch something. You think she's still in town? Doubt it. But people who pull this kind of stunt leave footprints. Wire transfers, property filings, receipts, they all lead somewhere. I nodded slowly. So what's the first step? He smirked, the kind of smirk that usually meant trouble. You let me do what I do best. Dig. He opened the folder he brought, sliding it across the table. Inside were screenshots, printouts, even a few photos. Your wife's been planning this for months. Lucas too. They've been meeting at hotels in Clearwater, Florida. That's where the last wire ended up. Clearwater. Sunlight, beaches, oceanfront property. A perfect paradise for liars. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my chest. Of course. She always said she wanted the ocean. Marcus sipped his coffee. You ready to go find her? I thought about that for a long time. About Rachel in her sundresses, smiling like sin in summer light. About the life she'd dismantled with one text. And about Lucas, the man who used to drink beer with me after shifts, talking about football and loyalty. My jaw tightened. Yeah, I said finally. I'm ready. He nodded, like that was the answer he'd been waiting for. Good. Because this isn't about chasing her. It's about making things right. I stared out the diner window. Rain had started again, thin and steady, painting the glass in streaks of silver. Somewhere down south, she was probably lying next to him, warm and safe, thinking she'd escaped. But the truth has a way of following you, even into paradise. As Marcus stood to leave, he put a hand on my shoulder. Don't do anything stupid before I call you, all right? Define stupid. He gave me that cop look. You know what I mean. I forced a smile. Yeah, I'll behave. He didn't believe me. Neither did I. When he walked out, I sat there for another hour, tracing the rim of my coffee cup, thinking about how quickly a life can collapse. One day, you're building a future with someone. The next, you're just a name on a forged document and a ghost in your own house. Outside, thunder rolled again, low, distant, promising another storm. And for the first time since her message, I wasn't numb anymore. I was awake. I left Detroit before dawn, the city still half asleep under a sheet of fog and broken streetlights. Marcus sat in the passenger seat, his thermos steaming up the window. The highway stretched ahead like an endless scar, and for the first time in days, I felt movement, purpose. We didn't talk much at first. The hum of the tires was enough. Every few miles, he'd glance at the GPS, then back at me. We've got 14 hours if we don't stop, he said finally. I'm not planning to stop, I answered. He nodded, unscrewing the thermos cap. You'll burn out before Florida if you keep that pace. Then I burn out. Marcus sighed. You can't fight crazy with exhaustion. You need your head clear when you see her again. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Who said I want to see her again? He gave me that look, the one that saw through bullshit. You wouldn't be driving halfway across the country if you didn't. He wasn't wrong. I didn't know what I wanted, closure, revenge, maybe just to see her face when she realized I was still standing. The farther south we drove, the lighter the air felt. The gray gave way to gold, the industrial haze fading into open fields. Somewhere near Kentucky, Marcus pulled out his tablet, scrolling through records like a surgeon examining x-rays. Found another transfer, he said. $100,000 wired to a shell company in Clearwater. Guess whose name's on the papers? Lucas, I said. He grinned. Smart boy. The company's registered to his cousin, but the trail's obvious. They bought a property 3 weeks ago, beachfront, gated, 5 bedrooms. Luxury cars in the garage. Sounds cozy. I let out a long breath. She always said she wanted to wake up to the sound of waves. Marcus looked at me. You know, Danny, it's funny. Most people dream of a better life. But when they finally get it, it's never enough. They always want more. Rachel never stopped wanting, I said quietly, even when she had everything. We drove another few hours before stopping at a gas station just outside Nashville. I leaned against the truck, watching the sun melt over the horizon, orange bleeding into blue. Marcus stood beside me, lighting a cigarette. "You ever think about why she did it?" he asked. I shook my head. I used to think it was me, that I worked too much, didn't listen enough. But now, I exhaled slowly. Now I think she just wanted to see how far she could go before it all collapsed. He flicked ash into the wind. You can't fix people who feed on destruction. You can only decide how much of yourself you'll let them take. I thought about that for a long time. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't kill you, it rearranges you. Like a house that's been gutted, you're still standing, but the rooms echo different. We got back on the road after dark. The radio played low, classic rock, static between stations. The miles blurred together. Sometimes I'd catch myself remembering small, stupid things. Rachel humming in the shower, her hair dripping down her back, the way she'd trace circles on my chest when she wanted to talk about something serious. Those memories used to feel warm. Now they just burned. Near midnight, Marcus broke the silence. "You ever think about what you'll do when you find her?" "I'll ask her why," I said, though even I didn't believe that was all. "And if she lies? Then she'll see what truth looks like." He didn't press further. He didn't need to. We stopped at a roadside motel just north of Tampa the next evening. The place smelled like bleach and cigarettes, but it had beds and a working lock. Marcus was out cold within minutes. I couldn't sleep. I sat outside on the balcony, the humid air heavy on my skin, watching headlights roll past on the highway. Somewhere out there, she was sleeping beside Lucas, probably dreaming of her perfect life. Maybe she thought I was still back in Detroit, broken, buried in the ruins she left. She had no idea I was this close. I took out my phone and opened the last picture I had of us. Her in that red dress at the company dinner, smiling like the world already belonged to her. I'd thought that smile meant love. Now I knew better. It meant victory. I deleted the picture. The next morning, Marcus had news. "Confirmed the address," he said, tossing a file on the bed. "Villa on Ocean Crest Drive. Security gate, cameras, the works. But there's a hill behind it, public property. We can get a look from there." I nodded, my pulse quickening. "When do we go?" He smiled faintly. "After breakfast. You don't want to face her on an empty stomach." I managed a dry laugh. "You really think I'm going to talk to her?" "I think you'll look. And once you see, you'll decide if she's still worth your words." We hit the road again, the morning sun spilling over the palm trees as we drove into Clearwater. The air smelled of salt and promise. It was beautiful, too beautiful for what waited there. As we crested the hill, Marcus parked the truck. "There," he said, pointing. The villa shimmered below us like something out of a commercial. Glass walls, white stone, infinity pool overlooking the ocean. And there, by the pool, Rachel, lying in a gold bikini, sunglasses on, laughing as Lucas poured her a drink. For a second, the world narrowed to her silhouette, every memory colliding in my chest. She looked different, sharper, brighter, like someone who'd shed her old skin and didn't miss it. "She looks happy," Marcus murmured. "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "But so do snakes when they're sunbathing." He raised his camera and started taking pictures. "Let her have her moment," he said, "because soon it'll be the last one she gets." I didn't answer. I just kept watching. The wind carried the sound of her laughter up the hill, and I felt something inside me shift. Not pain, not rage, but clarity. The road to Clearwater hadn't just brought me here to find her. It had brought me here to end something. Cleanly, finally. And this time, she wouldn't see it coming. Clearwater was the kind of place that didn't believe in pain. The streets were clean, the air sweet with salt and sunscreen, and everyone seemed to walk slower, as if the sun itself made time lazy. But I could feel it under the calm surface, the pulse of something false, something I recognized in myself. Marcus and I rented a small house 2 miles inland, just enough space to stay quiet and close. From the front porch, you could almost hear the surf if the wind was right. We spent the first day watching, learning, mapping. By dusk, we knew every delivery time, every gate code, every car that came and went from that villa on Ocean Crest Drive. Rachel and Lucas lived like royalty. A white Range Rover, a black Mercedes, and too many designer bags for a woman who once scolded me for buying a new drill. She had turned wealth into a second skin, gold jewelry, silk dresses, and a confidence that could have fooled God himself. The first time I saw her up close again, it was through a telephoto lens. She was by the pool with the kids, Caleb and Mia. My heart stopped when I saw them. Caleb had gotten taller. Mia's hair had grown past her shoulders. They were laughing, splashing in the water, unaware that the man behind the camera was their father. Rachel sat in a lounge chair, wearing a wide straw hat and a smile that looked too easy. Lucas leaned down to kiss her, and she didn't hesitate. It wasn't a shy kiss, it was deliberate, possessive, practiced. My stomach turned. I wanted to shout her name. I wanted to tell my kids I was there, that I hadn't abandoned them. But Marcus's hand on my shoulder kept me grounded. "Not yet," he said quietly. "If you move now, you lose everything." I nodded, though it felt like swallowing glass. Watching her touch another man, watching Lucas lift my daughter out of the pool like she was his, it felt like being erased in real time. Marcus kept snapping photos. "You see the patterns?" he asked. "She's not just living. She's performing." He was right. Every gesture was calculated. The way she waved to the neighbor, the way she leaned into Lucas's chest when the maid walked by. Rachel was building an image, a perfect facade. "She's selling the story," Marcus said, lowering the camera. "The happy wife, the reborn mother, the paradise life." "And what's underneath?" I asked. "Rot," he said. We left before sunset. The image of her stayed burned in my mind the entire drive back. Her laughter, the glint of her wedding band, not the one I gave her, but something new, bigger, shinier. I kept thinking about that ring and what it must have cost. That night, Marcus spread the photos across the table. "We'll need more," he said. "Financial records, phone logs. If she forged your signature once, she'll do it again. We'll corner her with her own paper trail." I stared at the pictures, my wife in another man's arms, my children in another man's home. "You think she's happy?" I asked. Marcus shrugged. "Happiness built on theft doesn't last. But people like her, they don't care about lasting. They care about winning." He was right again. Rachel had always treated love like a scoreboard. When we met, she said I made her feel safe. But safety bored her. She needed chaos to feel alive. Lucas was chaos in a suit, charming, reckless, exactly the kind of man who'd burn down his life just to watch the flames. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat outside with a beer, listening to the cicadas and the distant waves. I thought about the first time Rachel told me she loved me. It was raining, a soft summer storm. We were in my old apartment, the lights off, just the sound of rain against the window and her breath on my neck. She said it so quietly, I almost missed it. Back then, I believed her. Every word, every touch. Now, remembering that night felt like replaying a scene from someone else's life. By the next morning, we had a plan. Marcus arranged a drone, small, quiet, untraceable. From the footage, we learned more than I wanted to know. Rachel had meetings during the day, real estate agents, lawyers, even a few men in suits who didn't look like locals. She was running something. Not just living, but moving money. "Fraud," Marcus muttered, watching the feed. "She's laundering cash through shell properties, using Lucas as the front." "She's smarter than I thought," I said. He glanced at me. "No, she's greedier than you thought." Late that afternoon, we drove past the beach. The air smelled of salt and tanning oil, and the world felt too bright for what was happening inside me. At a stoplight, Marcus said, "You still love her, don't you?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't know what I love anymore," I said. "The woman I married doesn't exist. Maybe she never did." He nodded. "That's the hardest part, realizing you loved a ghost." We parked near the marina and watched the sun sink into the water. I should have felt peace. Instead, I felt the kind of calm that comes before a storm. Rachel was close, close enough to touch, and yet so far from the woman I once held. When we got back to the house, Marcus poured us both a drink. "Tomorrow," he said, "we make contact. Not with her, not yet. With someone who knows her. A realtor, a banker, maybe a friend. You'll see how deep the rabbit hole goes." I nodded, but my mind was still on that villa, on my kids, on Rachel's smile. She looked untouchable, radiant in that gilded prison she'd built for herself. But every fortress has a crack, and I was going to find it. As the night settled over Clearwater, I stood by the window, the sound of the ocean whispering through the palm trees. For the first time since she left, I didn't feel helpless. I felt patient. And patience, when mixed with pain, is just another word for revenge. Marcus always said there's a moment when anger turns into focus, when the noise fades and all that's left is direction. Mine came 2 days later, outside a cafe that smelled of roasted beans and sea air. I knew she'd be there. We'd followed her schedule long enough to predict her patterns. Every morning, after her yoga class, Rachel stopped by Soulrise Cafe, a quiet spot by the marina. Same time, same drink, almond milk latte, 2 sugars. The woman who used to mock me for spending too much on gas now dropped $20 on breakfast smoothies. Marcus parked a block away, camera ready. I stepped out alone. My pulse thudded in my ears as I walked toward the cafe. I could already see her, sitting outside, sunglasses on, hair tied in a loose bun, reading something on her phone. The sun caught her skin just right. She looked untouched by guilt, by consequence, by me. For a second, I almost turned back. Some part of me, the weak part, still remembered the nights she'd fall asleep on my chest, whispering half-dreamed words. But that memory didn't belong here. Not under this sun. Not in this life. I crossed the street. She looked up. Her face froze for half a heartbeat. Then that smile appeared. Polished. Controlled. The same smile she'd worn at every dinner party. Every fake apology. "Danny," she said, voice light as sugar. "You really should have seen this coming." My jaw tightened. "What did you do?" She tilted her head, as if amused. "Do? Oh, Danny. You make it sound so sinister. I just moved on. By emptying our accounts? Selling the house." "Correction," she said, setting down her cup. "My house. You never noticed how little of it was really yours, did you?" There was a tremor beneath her calm, a flicker of nerves she tried to hide. But I saw it. The kind of tremor that only comes from guilt that's been buried too long. "You forged my name," I said quietly. "You stole from me. From our kids." Her expression shifted, not remorse, but irritation. "Don't make this about them. I took what I needed. I earned it in ways you'll never understand." I stared at her, the woman I'd once trusted with everything. "Lucas," I asked. "Was he always part of the plan?" Her lips curved, just barely. "Lucas was always the one I wanted. You were safe, comfortable, a good placeholder until I could afford something better." The words landed like blades. "You're proud of this?" I asked. "Proud." She laughed softly. "No, Danny. I'm free. You were a cage dressed as a husband. You built your world around duty, around some idea of love that felt like obligation. I wanted more. I leaned closer. And what happens when Lucas gets bored of you? When the next shiny thing walks by?" She slipped on her sunglasses, her voice turning sharp. "Then I'll find someone else. Don't worry. I'm very good at starting over." For a second, I saw something behind her confidence. A flicker of fear, a shadow. Maybe she knew deep down that this wasn't forever, that the life she'd built on lies would crack eventually. But I didn't want to see her fear. I wanted her truth. "Rachel," I said, my voice low, "you think you won. You think you got away clean. But you left fingerprints on everything. Money trails, emails, signatures. You're not untouchable." Her smile faltered. "Just for a moment." "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I wouldn't what?" "Expose me. You don't have it in you." I looked at her, really looked. The perfect tan, the designer dress, the empty confidence. The woman who used to cry in my arms after her mother's funeral now stared at me like a stranger. "You're right," I said finally. "The old me wouldn't. But he's gone." She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "You're bluffing." Before I could answer, Marcus stepped out from across the street, camera in hand. He didn't approach, just raised it slightly. A quiet signal that everything had been recorded. Her smile snapped back into place, but her hands trembled as she picked up her drink. "You really want to play that game?" she asked. "Game?" I said. "You started this. I'm just finishing it." Her eyes hardened. "You'll regret this, Danny. I promise you." "Maybe," I said. "But at least I'll regret something honest." For the first time since that message, I turned and walked away without looking back. I could feel her watching me, that calculated stillness she wore when she didn't know how to respond. It used to make me want to protect her. Now it only made me want to end whatever spell she'd cast over my life. Marcus met me halfway down the street. "You handled that better than I expected." "I didn't handle anything," I said. "I just survived it." He grinned faintly. "Survival's a start." We drove off without speaking. The ocean flashed in the rearview mirror, calm and endless. I knew Rachel thought she still had control, that she could twist this in her favor like she always did. But what she didn't understand was that I wasn't chasing her anymore. I was hunting the truth, and truth doesn't negotiate. When we reached the house, Marcus poured 2 drinks. "You good?" he asked. I took the glass, stared out at the horizon. "Not yet," I said. "But I will be." He raised his glass. "To what comes next?" "To the quiet before the storm," I replied. And as night fell over Clearwater, I realized that seeing her hadn't broken me. It had sharpened me. She thought she'd written the last chapter of our story. She was wrong. I was just starting to write mine. Some wars aren't fought with guns or fists. They're fought with silence, the kind that stretches between moves, measured and deliberate. Marcus called it the quiet war. The kind where you win by knowing more than the other side even realizes you're watching. After the confrontation at the cafe, Rachel vanished from her usual spots. No morning lattes, no yoga classes, no leisurely walks by the pier. She went to ground, which meant she knew I was close. That was fine. Let her hide. The best traps are the ones that let the prey think they're safe. For days, Marcus and I worked like ghosts. He set up a small workstation in the spare bedroom of the rental house, laptops, scanners, encrypted drives. His world was one of passwords and paper trails. Mine was memory and motive. Between the two of us, we started peeling back the layers of Rachel's new life. "She's got at least 5 shell accounts," Marcus said one night, the glow from his screen painting his face blue. "Most of them trace back to Lucas. Offshore banks, phony investments, luxury property flips. Classic laundering operation." I leaned over his shoulder. "How much?" He clicked a few tabs. "Rough estimate? 2.5 million, maybe more." I let out a low whistle. "All from our joint funds?" "Partly," he said. "But there's more. She's been forging your name on loan documents, investment approvals. Hell, she even used your signature to authorize one of the property sales." "Unbelievable," I muttered. "She didn't just leave me. She turned me into an accomplice." Marcus smirked grimly. "That's the idea. If she ever gets caught, she drags you down with her. Smart in a sick way." I sat back, jaw tight. "So how do we hit back?" He turned toward me. "You don't. Not yet. You let me build the case. We gather every document, every trace, every digital footprint. When we move, it has to be clean. Precise." I nodded, but patience was a hard thing to swallow. Every night, I pictured Rachel laughing by the pool, the kids playing in a house paid for with my money. It made sleep impossible and silence unbearable. I'd lie awake listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, imagining her voice, her lies. One night, Marcus broke the silence. "You ever wonder what she's afraid of?" I turned to him. "Losing." He smiled. "Exactly. So that's what we take from her, the illusion of control." Over the next week, we did exactly that. Marcus hacked into her email archives, digging up communications with her lawyers and investors. Most of it was dull corporate talk, but then we found something that made my blood go cold. It was an email chain between Rachel and a fitness client of Lucas's, a married woman with political ties. The tone wasn't professional. The woman was paying Lucas for sessions that had nothing to do with exercise. And Rachel had the receipts, literal ones. Photos, messages, even recordings. She'd been collecting evidence, probably as leverage. Marcus grinned when he saw it. Oh, this is gold. She thinks she's sitting on dynamite. But the second we release this, the blast will hit her too. She's blackmailing him, I said quietly. Her own lover. Of course she is, Marcus said. That's what she does, finds weaknesses and feeds off them. I stared at the screen, trying to process it all. Every layer of her life was built on deception. She hadn't changed. She just upgraded her lies. Marcus leaned back in his chair. You know, Danny, this could ruin them both. Fraud, adultery, extortion, it's a trifecta. We don't even have to touch them physically. We just have to show the world what they are. I hesitated. You sure you want to go nuclear? He looked at me. You told me you wanted justice. I did, I said. But part of me still wonders if I'm doing this because I want to win or because I want to hurt her. Marcus gave me a long, steady look. You can't separate the two. Sometimes justice is pain delivered clean. I thought about that for a long time. The truth was, I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Closure? Revenge? Maybe just proof that I hadn't been crazy to love her once. A few nights later, Marcus set up a projector in the living room. The same photos and documents we'd gathered laid out in order. Fraudulent signatures, bank transfers, messages between Rachel and Lucas that would make any jury's blood boil. I watched the slideshow in silence. The evidence of her betrayal now turned into strategy. This is what she built, Marcus said. Lies wrapped in gold. Now we turn it against her. He turned to me. You ready? I took a breath. Yeah. Let's start the war. From that point on, it was all precision. Marcus contacted an attorney who owed him favors, one with federal connections. Quietly, discreetly, we fed them information, anonymous tips, traceable documents, enough to start an investigation without revealing our hand. Meanwhile, I began my own subtle counterattack. I started calling the banks, posing as myself, the real Daniel Reed. I filed disputes, froze what accounts I could, left a trail that would force auditors to take a closer look at her transactions. Every move I made tightened the noose just a little more. And through it all, I didn't once try to call her, didn't text, didn't send an email. Silence was my weapon now. I wanted her to feel the unease of waiting, the creeping suspicion that something was unraveling behind the curtain. Marcus noticed one morning. You're getting good at this, he said. Cold. Efficient. I learned from the best, I replied. He smirked. Her. I nodded. Yeah, but she taught me too late. The days stretched into a rhythm of quiet moves and unseen consequences. I began to feel something I hadn't felt in months. Control. The ache was still there, but it no longer ruled me. When Marcus showed me the final set of files, bank records tied to Lucas's gym, payments labeled as consulting fees from Rachel's company, I knew it was time. She buried you under lies, Marcus said, handing me the drive. Now we'll bury her under truth. I stared at the drive for a long moment before sliding it into my pocket. Let's finish this, I said. And for the first time since she'd left, I wasn't just reacting. I was leading the war. When a lie starts to fall apart, it doesn't shatter all at once. It hairlines first, a tiny fissure in the paint, then another, until the whole surface betrays what's underneath. That's how Rachel's life came apart. Slow, inevitable, humiliatingly public. I was making coffee when Marcus called. His voice had that evenness I'd come to trust, like a surgeon announcing results without theatrics. They froze her accounts, he said. States auditing the transfers. Banks moved fast once the attorney called. I didn't let the mug tremble, though my hands wanted to. How much? I asked, because even after everything, the numbers still meant something. They were proof, the cold arithmetic that showed who had taken what. Enough, Marcus said. They put holds on properties, moved to suspend her business license pending investigation. Lucas's gym got served with subpoenas this morning. He paused, then added, also there's chatter online. The affair leaked. Some of Lucas's clients are not happy. That last part felt like a punch beneath the ribs. Not because I cared about Lucas's reputation. I didn't. But because the smear would spread like oil on water. People love to watch gilded people slip. It's better entertainment than most TV. By noon, the neighborhood was a theater of murmurs. Clearwater has a way of being small and loud, even with its wide beaches and big houses. Neighbors peered from hedges. Delivery drivers pretended not to look. Someone even took a picture of Rachel's Range Rover idling in the circular driveway with a toddler in the back seat and posted it to a local forum with a caption that asked, pointedly, "Who pays for that life?" Rachel's phone calls began in a steady, desperate stream. Marcus tracked them through a burner number she used for business, the kind of sloppy mistake we both predicted she'd make when she thought she was above consequence. He let the phone ring until the fourth or fifth time before answering his own. "She's freaking out," he told me later, when we sat on the stoop of our rental house and watched a gull circle over the bay. Called 3 of her old friends. Called Lucas's lawyer. Left a message for the bank manager that sounded like she was about to cry. I couldn't imagine that voice, the one that hollered at me for leaving the car lights on, the one that sang off-key in the kitchen. For the first time, I heard instead the brittle edges of someone who'd lost balance. "You gonna answer her?" Marcus asked. "No," I said. "Let her dance with the vultures for a while." The words tasted like something hard and foreign in my mouth. I didn't feel the urge to gloat. Watching didn't feel sweet. It felt necessary, like setting a house on fire to see the termites who lived inside scurry. The press arrived fast. A local blog picked up on a public records leak, an anonymous tip Marcus suspected, fed through channels we hadn't touched. Headlines called it scandal and betrayal, and other words designed to sell clicks. I read them in the diner near the marina, where the waitress knew my order and pretended not to ask questions. "Lot of noise," she said when she set down my eggs. "You all right, hon?" "Fine," I lied, because the truth that my life was rearranging itself into something new and raw didn't deserve the small talk. In the days that followed, the cracks widened. A business partner named on one of Rachel's investment pitches suddenly scrubbed his social media, leaving a single post that read, "Sometimes you find out people aren't who you thought they were." The gym's website went dark, replaced with a closed for renovations message. A neighbor I'd waved to for years crossed the street to avoid me, her eyes dropping when they met mine. I noticed these things like a man watching a skyline change. The angles first, the silhouette different, then the details. It wasn't joy exactly. Maybe satisfaction, tempered by the kind of grief that comes when you see something familiar become foreign. Rachel started to leave voicemails for me, the kind that looped between apology and accusation. At first they were frantic. Then they were measured. "Danny, please," one said. "You don't understand." "I had to," another. "You were never enough. You should have seen the signs." The last one I listened to 3 times, not because I wanted to replay her words, but because listening felt like closing a chapter. Marcus found proof that Lucas had been less discreet than he'd thought. The married client's husband had discovered messages and confronted the couple. A fight had spilled into a recorded conversation that painted Lucas as a man comfortable with the damage he caused. Marcus sent the clip to a reporter who had been sniffing around, and within 48 hours, Lucas's name was in print alongside adjectives like scandal and infidelity. The fallout was a kind of weather. Some days were storms, ugly comments, flashing cameras, creditors knocking. Other days were the weird stillness that comes after thunder. Neighbors pretending not to notice the tire tracks in the lawn where bank trucks had been. Through it all, I kept the children's schedule. I picked up Caleb from soccer practice, watched Mia in her school recital, sat in the back row while she sang a hymn about home. They ran to me afterward like nothing had changed. And in their laugh, in the small warmth of their shoulder against mine at night, I found a quietness that no headline could touch. One evening, Rachel appeared at the school's event, unannounced, hair in a desperate twist, eyes rimmed red. She stood at the edge of the hall, like someone who'd wandered into the wrong movie and decided to watch anyway. We didn't speak. Marcus kept a respectful distance. I let her watch our life continue without her. Seeing her there, not glossy, not controlled, just raw, did something else inside me. It didn't return longing. It didn't erase the hurt. It clarified it. She wasn't the woman I'd loved. She was someone who'd build a story and then flinched when it went public. People started saying things. A PDA mother who'd always said hello now murmured, "I'm so sorry, Daniel." A neighbor brought over a casserole. Small kindnesses, the kind you get when a community sees someone fall and leans in. Those gestures mattered more than any vindication. I don't know if Rachel realized what she'd started when she took that first reckless step. Maybe she was never meant to understand. Maybe she believed then, with the same fierce conviction that let her betray me, that she'd outsmarted everyone. But cracks are telling things. They show you what's under the surface. Wood eaten by rot, concrete crumbling where there should have been steel. In the mirror, I saw my own cracks too. The man who'd trusted completely, who'd believed in steady hands and honest work, wasn't gone. He was rearranged. The edges were sharper now, the lines harder earned. I stood in the bathroom one night and looked at myself until the reflection blurred. Rain had come again, beating on the windows like a reminder. I ran the hot water and let the steam fog the glass. When the mirror cleared, I didn't like what I saw, but I recognized him. A man who had been broken without being destroyed. A man who was learning the geometry of patience and the language of careful ruin. The war hadn't ended. The mirror had cracked deeper, and the pieces were falling. But with each fissure, with each scandal, something else was being revealed. The truth, messy and late, was finally finding its way into the light. The invitation came wrapped in gold and hypocrisy. A glossy card embossed with their names, Rachel and Lucas. Vow renewal ceremony, Ocean Crest Resort. Marcus found it stuffed into our mailbox like a taunt. "Well," he said, flicking the edge of the card, "either she's lost her mind or she's doubling down on the illusion." "She's doing what she always does," I muttered, trying to rewrite the story before anyone else finishes it for her. The date was 3 days away. A weekend of champagne, cameras, and guests who would pretend they didn't read the headlines. A desperate spectacle to polish the ruins. Marcus looked at me over his coffee. We could let her do it. Let her choke on her own fantasy. I stared at the gold lettering again. Forever begins again. The phrase made my stomach turn. "No," I said. "She's been performing long enough. It's time the audience saw the truth." He gave a slow nod. "Then we do it quietly. No drama, no chaos. Just the truth, undeniable and public." The resort was a cathedral of vanity. Glass chandeliers, marble floors, perfume thick enough to taste. We checked in under false names, dressed like guests who belonged. Marcus wore a dark suit and that steady calm he carried like armor. I wore the same gray jacket I'd bought years ago for our anniversary dinner. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. Outside, the sun was sinking over the gulf, turning the sky into molten gold. Guests mingled near the pool, laughter floating through the air like bubbles that wouldn't burst. Rachel stood at the center of it all, radiant in a white gown that cost more than my truck. Lucas, tan and grinning, played the part of the proud husband. From a distance, they looked perfect, two people unbroken, untouched. But the closer I watched, the more I saw it. The stiffness in Rachel's smile, the flicker of unease when someone mentioned the papers. Marcus adjusted his tie. "They're nervous," he said. "Good. Nerves make people sloppy." We waited until the ceremony began. Rows of white chairs faced the ocean, and the officiant's voice blended with the tide. Rachel took the microphone, her voice trembling just enough to sound human. "Sometimes," she said, smiling toward Lucas, "you have to lose everything to find the one who truly matters." Applause rose. Cameras clicked. The perfect shot, or so she thought. Then the projector behind her flickered. The slideshow began as planned. Childhood photos, vacations, smiling faces. But 30 seconds in, the images changed. Screenshots of bank transfers, signed documents, private emails. A recording of Rachel's voice saying, "Make sure Daniel never finds out." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass. Rachel froze, her smile collapsing. Lucas turned toward her, confusion turning to fury as a new slide appeared. Photos of him with a married client, her face blurred but unmistakable. The murmur of guests swelled into a storm of whispers. Phones came out. Flashbulbs flared. "What is this?" the officiant stammered. Marcus leaned toward me. "Proof," he said softly. Rachel grabbed the microphone, her voice rising above the noise. "Turn it off. This is fake." But no one moved. The screen showed more emails between her and Lucas planning the theft, her messages bragging about getting away clean. Lucas stepped forward, his jaw tight. "You recorded me?" he hissed at her. She spun on him. "You idiot. You were supposed to delete those files." "Delete what files?" someone shouted from the crowd. Chaos erupted. Reporters who'd been invited to cover the exclusive event began filming, drawn like sharks to blood. Rachel's hand shook as she tried to unplug the projector, but Marcus had locked the feed remotely. Every lie she'd built now glowed against a 20-foot wall of light. I stood at the back, silent, watching the empire she'd stolen collapse under its own weight. There was no satisfaction in it. Not really. Just a quiet sense of balance returning, like gravity reclaiming what had been defying it too long. Lucas stormed off toward the parking lot. Rachel called after him, her voice cracking. "Lucas, wait. We can fix this." He didn't turn. The guests began to scatter, whispers, pity, disgust. Rachel stood alone under the arch of white roses, the veil trembling in the sea breeze. Her gaze swept the crowd until it found me. For a moment, everything else disappeared. The noise, the cameras, the chaos. Just her eyes, full of disbelief, recognition, and something close to despair. "Danny," she said, barely audible. "You did this." I didn't move. Didn't speak. Marcus appeared beside me, his voice low. "That's justice, my friend." I watched her one last time before turning away. "No," I said quietly. "That's consequence." We drove back along the coast in silence, the night pressing close around us. The air smelled of salt and smoke, and the waves shimmered under the moon like scattered glass. "You okay?" Marcus asked finally. I stared out the window. "Ask me tomorrow." He nodded. "Tomorrow it'll all be in the news. Fraud, embezzlement, adultery, she's finished." I didn't answer. I thought of my children, asleep somewhere under the same sky, innocent of all of it. Thought of Rachel standing in that white dress, surrounded by the ruins she'd built herself. The world outside blurred as we drove, light smearing into lines. For the first time in months, my chest didn't ache. It felt empty, but clean. The quiet war was over. And though the wreckage was hers, the freedom, finally, was mine. The morning after the ceremony, Clearwater woke up different. The sun rose the same, but the headlines didn't. Every local paper, every gossip site, every business blog, they all ran the story. Fraud, embezzlement, scandal at Ocean Crest. Rachel's name was everywhere, side by side with Lucas's. Photos from the vow renewal flooded the feeds. Her pale face caught mid-denial, his rage frozen in motion. By noon, the world had already made up its mind. Rachel was no longer the radiant woman on the beach. She was the headline everyone loved to hate, the con artist, the fallen wife, the woman who took too much and lost it all. Lucas wasn't spared either. The footage of him storming off, followed by his mistress's husband calling him out in the parking lot, became a viral clip within hours. I watched it all unfold from the porch of the small rental house, coffee in hand, the ocean stretching out like nothing had happened. Marcus sat across from me, scrolling through his phone. "She's trending," he said flatly. "Every platform. Her business accounts are frozen, legal teams circling like vultures. Lucas got dropped by 2 sponsors, and one client's already filed a civil suit. This is the kind of storm you don't recover from." I nodded, though the satisfaction didn't hit like I'd imagined. I thought I'd feel triumphant. I didn't. Just done. "What happens now?" I asked. Marcus set the phone down. "The state takes over. She'll be investigated for fraud and identity theft. You'll get calls from lawyers. Eventually, they'll ask you to testify, maybe reclaim some assets. But right now," he gave a faint grin, "you sit back and watch the house of cards fall." That night, I sat by the window while rain smeared the glass. Every few minutes, my phone buzzed with messages, reporters, attorneys, even a few old friends pretending to care. I ignored them all until one name appeared that made me stop. Rachel. A single text, please. Meet me. No location, no time, just that word, heavy with everything we hadn't said. I should have ignored it, but I couldn't. She was waiting outside the courthouse the next afternoon. The sky was gray, the kind that promises rain, but holds it back just long enough to make the air thick. She looked smaller somehow, her hair pulled back, makeup gone. The white perfection was gone too, just a wrinkled blouse, sunglasses that failed to hide the tremor in her hands. When she saw me, her mouth twitched like she wanted to smile, but didn't remember how. Danny, she said softly. You came. I shouldn't have. She exhaled shakily. I know. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of traffic filled the space where love used to live. Then she said it, not with anger this time, but disbelief. You ruined me. I met her eyes. No, Rachel. You did that all by yourself. Her lips parted as if to argue, but the words never came. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to defend. She looked away toward the courthouse steps. Reporters were already gathering at a distance, cameras waiting. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They're going to destroy me, Danny. I can't sleep. I can't. You destroyed yourself, I interrupted, more gently than I meant to. You built a world out of lies and thought no one would notice when it started to rot. Her eyes glistened. I loved you, you know. I almost laughed. No, you loved what I gave you. Stability, forgiveness, someone to lean on when the rest of the world told you no. She swallowed, voice breaking. I made mistakes. Yeah, I said. And every one of them had my name on it. A flash went off nearby. A photographer catching the perfect picture of the fallen queen facing the man she betrayed. Rachel flinched, lowering her sunglasses. Are you happy now? She asked quietly. No, I said honestly. But I'm free. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, clutching the strap of her purse like it could anchor her. For the first time since the day she left, I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel pity either. Just distance. Like she was a stranger wearing a face I used to know. I turned to leave. Danny, she called after me, her voice small. Do you ever think about what we had? I stopped but didn't turn around. Every day, but only to remind myself what not to lose again. Then I walked away, leaving her standing on those courthouse steps as the cameras clicked and the rain finally started to fall. By the time I got back, Marcus had already packed his things. You sure you don't want to stick around for the trial? He asked. I've seen enough. He smiled faintly. Then my work here's done. You'll get the call when the assets go to restitution. Might not be much, but at least it'll be clean. He extended a hand. I took it. You did more than I asked, I said. Thank you. Just doing my job, he said, then added with a smirk. But next time you fall in love, maybe pick someone who doesn't belong on a watch list. I laughed, for real this time, and it felt strange, like using a muscle I hadn't moved in months. When he left, the house felt quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. It wasn't empty, just still. That night, I sat on the porch and watched the storm roll out over the Gulf. The air smelled like wet salt and endings. Somewhere out there, Rachel was learning how to live without the world bending to her will. And me, I was learning how to breathe again without her name in my lungs. The war was over, the fall complete. And as the thunder faded into the distance, I realized I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. She was just a chapter. And I had finally turned the page. 6 months after the trial, I woke to the sound of gulls and my daughter's laughter echoing down the hallway. It was a sound I hadn't realized I'd been holding my breath for. The house was small, paint chipped in places, but it was mine, and more importantly, it was ours. I got up, made coffee, and watched the morning spill across the bay through the kitchen window. The water was calm, sunlight breaking over it in ribbons. Life had finally slowed down enough for me to notice the quiet details again. The smell of toast, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of Mia humming as she drew at the table. Dad, she said without looking up, can we go see the fireflies tonight? Sure, I said. If the weather holds. Caleb came in next, still half asleep, hair sticking up, clutching a cereal box. We got school today. It's Saturday. He grinned. Then I'm going back to bed. I laughed. The sound came easy now. It didn't scrape against grief like it used to. I'd learned that healing isn't a single moment. It's hundreds of small ones stitched together. Until one day you wake up and realize the ache isn't the first thing you feel anymore. Rachel was gone. Not dead, not imprisoned forever, just gone. After the scandal, she'd pled guilty to lesser charges in exchange for testimony against Lucas, who hadn't been so lucky. He was serving time in a state facility, his name now synonymous with betrayal. Rachel avoided prison, but not consequence. The courts seized her accounts and stripped her of everything she'd stolen. The house in Clearwater went to auction. The cars disappeared. The jewelry was reclaimed by debt collectors. Last I heard, she was living somewhere inland, working for a cousin's small firm under her maiden name. I didn't follow her story after that. Some ghosts are better left wandering. Life came back in quiet ways. Marcus visited once unannounced, standing in my doorway with a smirk and 2 beers. "You look almost human again," he said. "Almost." He shrugged. "Give it time. You're getting there." We sat on the porch that night, watching the sun dissolve behind the horizon. The kids played in the yard, their laughter rolling through the dusk. Marcus clinked his bottle against mine. "You did good, Danny." "I just survived." "Same thing," he said. He left before midnight, the sound of his engine fading down the road like an old song. I didn't see him again after that, but his word stayed. Surviving was its own kind of victory. Work at the mill came back slowly. The foreman rehired me when I told him I was staying for good. The noise of the machines, the rhythm of labor, it grounded me in ways therapy never could. There's something honest about steel. You bend it, shape it, heat it, and if it breaks, it tells you exactly why. No lies. No masks. Some evenings, I'd walk to the edge of the bay with Mia and Caleb. We'd sit on the old pier, legs dangling over the water, watching the light fade. Those were the moments that rebuilt me, not the big victories, but the quiet ones. "Dad," Mia said once, eyes wide as the sky turned orange, "do you think Mom misses us?" The question landed like a soft punch. I didn't want to lie, but I didn't want to harden her heart either. "Maybe," I said finally. "But what matters is, we're okay now." She smiled and leaned her head on my shoulder. Caleb threw a rock that skipped twice before sinking. The ripples spread out, endless and calm. I looked at them, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't see reminders of what I'd lost. I saw the reason I'd survived. Sometimes when the house is quiet and the kids are asleep, I still think about Rachel. Not with anger or longing, just a faint curiosity about how far she's drifted. Maybe she's found peace in her own way. Maybe she hasn't. But her story no longer overlaps with mine. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes, not as a symbol of her, but of who I was back then. The man who believed in promises. The man who built his life around trust. He deserved to be remembered, even if the marriage didn't. There's a strange kind of beauty in what remains after destruction. It's cleaner, simpler, like the air after a storm. I've learned to cook, learned to keep plants alive, learned that silence can be comforting when it isn't empty. And on nights like this, when the world feels still and the bay glows under the moon, I feel something I haven't felt in years: peace. It's easy to forget how close I came to losing everything, how a single message in the rain shattered the life I thought was unbreakable. But now, looking at where I am, I understand something that used to sound like nonsense. Sometimes you have to be broken to see what you're made of. The rain comes back every spring. The storms still roll across the bay, but they don't scare me anymore. I've learned to listen to them, to the rhythm of the drops against the window, steady and unrelenting, just like life. Mia calls from the yard, laughing. Fireflies blink in the dusk, tiny sparks of light in the growing dark. Caleb chases them with a jar, his bare feet kicking up the grass. I step outside, the air cool against my skin, and watch them run beneath the fading glow. Their laughter carries through the night, soft and alive. And for the first time since the message that started it all, I realize I'm not waiting for anything anymore. Not revenge. Not answers. Not even forgiveness. Just this, the sound of my children's laughter, the salt air, the simple truth that I'm still here. I'm no longer the man who lost everything. I'm the man who found himself again.